Dean Martin was never a screamer. He almost never raised his voice. He didn't explode, didn't threaten, didn't put on a show of force. When Dean was angry, he became quiet, and that silence carried more danger than any tantrum ever could. In 1955, when a towering security guard planted a thick hand on Sammy Davis Jr.'s chest and blocked him from entering the Sands Hotel lobby, Dean didn't argue. He didn't summon management. He didn't call the police. He lit a cigarette, took a slow drag, and stared at the man without saying a word. 20 seconds passed. 20 long, merciless seconds. In that stare, the guard's authority drained out of him. His confidence collapsed. By the time Dean finally leaned in and whispered something only the two of them could hear, the guard didn't just move aside. He disappeared. That moment didn't end with shouting. It ended with fear, and it changed Las Vegas forever. To understand why that stare mattered, you have to strip away the fantasy version of the 1950s. Forget the tuxedos, the martinis, the laughter echoing through showrooms. Beneath the glamour of Las Vegas was something ugly and brutal. The Strip was segregated by violent, not policy. If a black person walked into a casino and tried to play a slot machine, security didn't escort them out politely. They dragged them into an alley and broke bones to send a message. You don't belong here. Go back where you came from. That was the rule, enforced with fists. And yet, the same casinos that enforced that cruelty were addicted to black talent. They needed it. They needed the rhythm, the fire, the soul they couldn't fake. They booked Louis Armstrong, Nat King Cole, Ella Fitzgerald, and above all, they booked Sammy Davis Jr., the greatest all-around entertainer alive. But the deal was poisoned. Black performers could electrify white audiences on stage, but the second the show ended, the illusion vanished. They were no longer stars. They were liabilities. Sammy Davis Jr. lived inside that contradiction every night. He could sing with raw emotion, dance with impossible grace, play instruments effortlessly, and mimic anyone in the room. He was often the highlight of the Rat Pack shows. But once the applause faded, humiliation began. After delivering a standing ovation performance, Sammy couldn't walk into the lounge for a drink. He couldn't sit at a table. He couldn't gamble. He couldn't even use the main bathrooms. Instead, security escorted him through service hallways, not to protect him, but to hide him. On that night in 1955, Sammy tried to enter the Sands lobby like any other headliner. A guard stopped him cold, hand to chest, enforcing a rule older than the building itself. The room froze. Everyone watched. This wasn't just about Sammy. It was about whether the Strip would stay frozen in fear or finally crack. Dean Martin saw it happen. He didn't rush over. He didn't posture. He approached slowly, calmly, as if nothing unusual was happening. He smoked, he stared, and in that silence, the guard realized something too late. This wasn't a drunk singer playing cool. This was a man who understood power. Dean leaned in and spoke softly, laying out consequences so precise, so economically catastrophic, that the guard's entire future evaporated in a sentence. No yelling, no threats of violence, just inevitability. The hand came off Sammy's chest. The guard stepped back, and just like that, the line moved. Sammy Davis Jr. walked into the lobby of the Sands Hotel like a man, not through a back hallway, not escorted, not hidden. And once that door opened, it never fully closed again. Other casinos followed, slowly, quietly, not because laws changed, but because power shifted. Dean Martin didn't argue for equality. He enforced it. That was the secret of Dean's strength. He didn't fight bullies by becoming one. He made them understand the cost of staying stupid. He didn't shout justice. He delivered consequences. And in a city built on intimidation, that calm certainty was revolutionary. You had to move through the hotel like a shadow, past the roaring laundry machines, past the kitchens thick with grease and onions, through narrow service corridors that smelled of sweat and steam, then out the back, near the loading dock, beside dumpsters baking in the desert heat. Night after night, Sammy was driven miles away from the Strip to the West Side, a segregated neighborhood with cracked roads and flickering lights, where air conditioning was a privilege and safety was never guaranteed, while Frank and Dean slept in penthouse suites wrapped in silken silence. Sammy stayed in a boarding house, alone. That was the bargain Las Vegas offered. Give us your brilliance and we'll hand you a check, but don't ever mistake that for belonging. Most performers swallowed it. They told themselves it was just business, just how things worked. They kept quiet, took the money, and learned how to look away. But for Sammy, every night carved something out of him. Each humiliation was a reminder that no matter how high he rose, the ceiling above him was solid concrete. Watching that slow erosion was unbearable to the one man Sammy trusted completely. The one man who didn't just get angry at racism, but felt revulsion toward it. Dean Martin. Dean wasn't a crusader. He wasn't interested in speeches or movements. Ask him about civil rights, and he'd probably deflect with a joke about his golf game. He didn't march, he didn't preach, but he lived by a code, a simple one, forged in steel mills and pool halls, sharpened in backroom card games and underground boxing rings. You don't bully the weak, and you don't abandon your friends. Dean knew what it meant to be treated like dirt. He had grown up an Italian kid who didn't speak English until he was 5. He'd been mocked, beaten, called names by people who believed they were born superior. He'd clawed his way up from nothing, dealing cards in illegal joints, fighting for scraps of cash, surviving on grit. From that life, he learned that character mattered more than color, and loyalty mattered more than power. He didn't see Sammy Davis Jr. as a symbol or a cause. He saw Smokey, a younger brother, a once-in-a-generation talent who could outdance, outswing, and outshine anyone in the room. And when Dean Martin claimed you as his own, you were covered, not with noise or fists, but with something far more unsettling: quiet protection. The kind that came from knowing exactly who held real power and how to use it without lifting a hand. Dean watched Sammy endure it all. The cold meals eaten alone because he wasn't allowed in the dining room, the forced smiles, the slow dimming of joy. And on a suffocating Tuesday night in 1955, Dean decided enough was enough. The routine was finished. The rules were about to change, even if it meant setting the place on fire. The sun had dropped behind the Mojave, but the heat still clung to the pavement outside the sands like a living thing. It was early evening, peak hour. Valets rushed between Cadillacs and Lincolns, engines idling, perfume and exhaust hanging in the air. Sammy's car rolled up to the front entrance beneath the bright lights of the portico. Normally, he would have told the driver to circle around back to the service entrance. Habit, survival. But that night, he was exhausted, tired of hiding, tired of being escorted like contraband. He stepped out of the car. Without the stage lights, he looked smaller, almost delicate. He adjusted his cuffs, straightened his jacket, and kept his eyes down, hoping to pass unnoticed. He moved toward the revolving doors, craving nothing more than cool air and a moment of dignity. The system didn't allow that. Thick arms shot out and slammed against his chest. The head of security, a man built like a concrete wall, sweating through his uniform. A man who enjoyed the authority handed to him. "Not here," he said loudly, making sure nearby guests could hear. "You know better." The crowd slowed. The moment stretched, and somewhere nearby, Dean Martin was watching. You know the rules. Around the back. Sammy froze. Through the glass doors he could see the warm gold of the lobby. People laughing, drinks clinking, life happening 3 feet away. Freedom was right there. I'm headlining, Sammy said softly, his voice betraying him. My name's on the sign. I just want to go to my room. The guard didn't budge. He folded his arms, thick and final. Doesn't matter. Front entrance is for guests, your staff. Kitchens. That way, don't make a scene. Sammy felt himself shrinking. He felt the eyes of tourists pressing into his back, the humiliation crawling up his throat. He was already turning, already preparing to apologize for existing, already ready to walk back toward the car and accept his place by the dumpsters, when the air changed. A black limousine eased to a stop behind him. The door opened. Cigarette smoke spilled out first. Then Dean Martin stepped onto the pavement. Dean wore a tuxedo that radiated quiet authority, his bow tie slightly loosened. His expression relaxed to the point of indifference, but his eyes were sharp. He took in everything in an instant. Sammy's posture, the guard's hand, the imbalance of power. Dean didn't hurry. He didn't rush to the rescue. He strolled forward with that unbothered gait, as if the night belonged to him. He stopped inches from the guard, said nothing, drew slowly from his cigarette, and let the smoke drift into the man's face. Then he looked at him. Dean locked eyes with the guard and didn't blink. There was no anger in his expression, no threat, no emotion at all. Seconds stretched. 5, 10, 20. The silence thickened until it became unbearable. Valets, pause, mid-step. Conversations died. Neon hummed overhead. Traffic whispered in the distance. Dean's stare peeled authority off the guard layer by layer, reducing him from enforcer to boy playing dress. It was the look of a man who understood exactly how power worked, because he had survived among people who wielded it for real. At last, Dean spoke. He didn't raise his voice. He barely breathed. You got your hand on my friend? He said calmly. That because you think he's furniture, or because you're confused about who runs this sidewalk? The guard swallowed. Mr. Martin, it's not personal. It's the rules. Management says. Dean nodded slowly, as if indulging a child. You just follow orders. He reached into his jacket. The guard tensed, hand twitching. Dean pulled out folded paper. His contract. He held pa up. This says I sing here, Dean said, which means I eat here. And it means I decide who I eat with. Then he tore it. The rip cut through the night. He tore it again and again. He let the scraps fall to the pavement. Now I don't sing, Dean said quietly. And when I don't sing, this place goes dark. And when this place goes dark, the men upstairs are going to ask who caused it. He leaned in until they were nearly nose to nose. And I'm going to tell them it was you. The color drained from the guard's face. He looked at the paper on the ground and understood exactly what it meant. Dean finished softly. Move your hand. The arm dropped. The door swung open. After you, the guard muttered. Dean didn't acknowledge him. He put a hand on Sammy's back and walked him through the front doors into the cool, golden light, like it had always been theirs. And just like that, something ancient and ugly cracked, not with shouting, not with fists, but with silence, certainty, and a man who refused to let his friend be diminished. He turned toward Sammy, slipped his arm through his, and gave his hand a reassuring pat. Come on, Smokey, he said, his voice instantly warm again, almost playful. Let's eat. I'm starving. They stepped through the doors together, and the Sands Hotel didn't just quiet down. It froze. The sound collapsed in on itself, like someone had cut the power to the entire building. Slot machines seemed to lose their music. Dice stopped clicking. Conversations evaporated mid-sentence. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. were moving arm in arm down the red carpet at the heart of the lobby. And the room didn't know how to breathe. Dean walked like he owned the floor beneath his shoes, shoulders loose, chin up, that familiar lazy grin on his face. He nodded 2 faces in the crowd, tossed out a casual good evening, a soft hello, darling, as if this were the most ordinary thing in the world. He wasn't confronting the impossible. He was normalizing it. Sammy felt the opposite. Every step felt exposed. He could feel eyes drilling into him, could see shock ripple across faces framed by fur collars and diamond earrings. Some stares burned with anger, others with disbelief. Each step forward was an act of rebellion. They reached the entrance to the Copa room. Luigi, the motardì, went pale when he saw them. He liked Sammy. He truly did. But he liked staying alive, too, Mr. Martin, Luigi whispered, sweat forming on his brow. I can't seat him in the main room. Please. The owner, Steen Linden, calm as ever, and slipped $100 bill into Luigi's pocket. Luigi, my friend, he said softly, the best table open tonight. The center booth, right under the chandelier. Luigi hesitated. Yes, but perfect, Dean said. That's ours. 2 steaks, rare. Bring the good bottle. And if anyone complains, send them to me. I'll be the guy having dinner with his brother. Luigi looked into Dean's eyes and understood this wasn't a request. He led them straight to the center of the room, visible to everyone. 10 minutes later, the hotel manager came hustling in, dragged down from upstairs in a panic. He was a thin man in a cheap suit, a messenger from men far scarier than himself. Mr. Martin, he hissed, trying to keep his voice down. You know the policy. You can't do this. Dean didn't even glance up from the menu. Evening, Jack. You like the veal tonight? D. This is serious, the manager begged. We've got high rollers here. Guests from the south. They're threatening to leave. Dean set the menu down slowly. The smile disappeared. The air around the table turned cold. Let them go, Dean said. What? I said let them go, Dean repeated. Call them a cab. Dean, those men spend fortunes here. Dean stood up. No humor left in him now. Jack, listen close, he said. Loud enough for nearby tables to hear? I bring more money into this casino in a weekend than they will in their entire lives. People come here for us. And we're a package deal. He pointed at Sammy, who was staring at the tablecloth. If he goes, I go. Frank goes, Joey goes. We walk tonight. And we tell the papers exactly why. The manager's face drained of color. Losing the Rat Pack would cripple the Sands. Then Dean leaned in one last time. And I heard a rumor this place might be for sale. Push me, and I might buy it. First thing I do, fire you and put Sammy in charge. The manager swallowed. Enjoy your dinner, gentlemen, he muttered, and disappeared. Dean sat back down, poured Sammy a glass of wine, and smiled again. See? He said lightly. Easy. Pass the salt, pal. That night, something cracked wide open. Dean Martin didn't shout or protest. He didn't wave a banner. He stared a bully into nothingness and bought his friend a steak. In doing so, he showed how fragile segregation really was. Sammy would later say, the world feared Frank Sinatra, but it wanted to be Dean Martin, because Dean didn't see color. He saw loyalty. And that night, in the heart of the Sands, He didn't just change where a man could sit. He gave his brother his dignity back.